At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Lovely. I'm so happy it's Friday, and Fridays have always been fun, but now they're just a little extra special because I get to spend them with you. Okay, so big things are happening this weekend. First and foremost, it is International Women's Day, and by the time you're listening to this, it might have already passed, but honestly, the essence of this month is something we should carry with us this entire month. So I wanted to wish everyone a happy International Women's Day, and my little love letter to you all is I want to appreciate you for your courage, your sensitivity, your grit, and hard work as you navigate a world that often makes things harder for women. And it's also Ramadan, so I'll do a little bit of a life update, but the shenanigans are kind of limited right now. I'm not really going out as much. I'm just enjoying my routine. In terms of love life, I'm still not on the dating apps, but something interesting has happened. If you remember my very first episode of Lovely, and if you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend you do after, because we had two incredible guests, Huda and Yasmin, who are matchmakers and are also on Hulu's Muslim Matchmaker. And they came on the show, I was chatting with them, and just like any matchmaker does, they started matchmaking me. And Yasmin, who by the way, I'm not a client of, but she's so kind and so lovely, she's trying to set me up. So maybe there's something brewing, but it's very early days, but who knows? Overall, life has been good. Your girl has been booked and busy, working 9 to 5, and then recording these episodes that I love doing. And speaking of recording, last week's episode was all about dating with strict parents. I had Genesis Soul on our episode last week. We had a really good chat. We had some great laughs. And we talked about a topic that really struck a chord with me, which is men need to have more real friendships.
Men need friends. Real ass friends. I feel like men just don't know how to connect.
And that brings me to today's topic. It's not the entire topic, but it is going to be one major segment of it. And today we're getting into dating from a male perspective, along with navigating friendships, relationships, and most importantly, what men say versus what they actually mean. My guest today is an actor, a comedian, a drummer from New York, and also trying to be TikTok famous, just like your girl here. Shareef Tahir, welcome to Lovely. How are you?
Good. Thanks for inviting me.
You are calling in from New York, correct?
I am.
And are you celebrating Ramadan right now?
I am not. My dad is celebrating and I am not.
I am in the same boat. My parents are fasting, but I am not. It gets tough. I know I introduced you, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. What have you been up to these days? What's new?
Like I said, I'm an actor, comedian, and for the longest time, I was making a living as a professional drummer in New York, playing with people like Patti LaBelle and Harry Connick Jr. Pandemic happened, and I was like, oh, maybe comedy now. And I started studying joke writing and got a gig writing for The Onion. Started doing stand-up around New York and still playing some drums for like income. pay the bills and stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of jumping all around. I write sketch comedy for UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. Through that, it got me a showcase show for Comedy Central that I'm pitching 3 sketches to Comedy Central next month. So I'm like preparing for that.
Lots of big stuff happening for you. I love to hear it. How did you get into drumming? Is that like, does it run in the family? Did you just pick it up one day?
I think I always gravitated towards music, and I just wanted to know how it was made. And I think I saw a live band once, and I was like, oh, I have to do that. It did not run in the family. I have a weird family dynamic. My dad was a professional ballet dancer in Egypt.
Wow. That's so unique. I love that.
Yeah. When I grew up in Southwest Virginia, and, we were the only like brown folks in town. I don't know if this was how it was with you, but my parents didn't really explain anything. It's like they didn't even acknowledge that we were the only brown folks.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you're at your most sensitive time in your life, it's like so crazy being different. Or I've always had a weird thing about my name. And because there were no foreign names in Roanoke, Virginia when I grew up there. So I hated my name. I wanted so bad to fit in because I didn't really have anyone to tell me, but like, hey, it's fine that you're maybe a little different here because you're not actually that different, like in the grand scheme of things, even though it feels like you're very different here. And gosh, a 15-minute conversation about that would have changed everything. The short answer is no one had a dancing dad. That's my point.
There's so much to unpack there. I definitely think it's really cool that you have a dancing dad. I think growing up, all I wanted to do was dance, and that was just not allowed. You either had to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant because accounting is so sexy to brown parents. Shareef, did you go by a different name? Did you go by Sam or like something else?
That would have been amazing. I should have thought of that. I don't know. I think I probably wasn't that creative to make up a name. Looking back, I think a lot of people were very accepting, like actually, but just the fact of being different. I mean, or they would make fun of it, but in a way that was like not necessarily bullying. And I'm sure there was bullying too. But when you're that young, when you're like 5 years old and you're like, why am I the only one not named Brad? It's like so scary. Oh, I remember playing Little League Baseball, the announcer being like, now up to bat, Shareef Tall Hair. People laughing, but not necessarily. I don't know that they were laughing at me, but they were just laughing at it. But it like stung so hard.
It stays with you, especially at that age. And you're right. Like a 15-minute conversation could have saved you so much trauma, but here we are. And also Brad didn't know that you were the only Shareef in town, right? So he didn't have anyone to ask either. Like, do I laugh at it or do I make sure he'd feel better? So I totally get it.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
I think you alluded to it, that your dad is Egyptian from Egypt. But for our listeners listening in, would love to hear it from you. What is your connection to immigrant identity?
I deflected it for as long as I could because I wanted to fit in. And it's so weird. I did that for so long as a child that it just became who I was. There was another Brown family that moved to town when I was in high school. Yeah, his name was Rahim. He was like, oh, cool. It's so cool. Like, you're Shareef. It's so cool to have another Middle Eastern family. I'd be like, keep it down, man.
We don't talk about that here.
Listen, everyone here likes beer pong. Learn it. Be good at it. Learn the lyrics to The Devil Went Down to Georgia by the Charlie Daniels Band. It's so important. Everyone loves that here. I tried to like forget about it. And then I moved to Richmond, Virginia, which is like kind of a city. And I would meet other Egyptians. There were like 4 more Egyptians than there were in Roanoke, Virginia, where I grew up. There was like more Middle Eastern restaurants and stuff. And then I would start visiting New York before moving there, and then just visiting bigger cities. I think I started to feel more connected to it after that and making friends. I had, obviously had no Middle Eastern friends until I was in college or after that. My parents weren't around that much, and they never taught me Arabic or anything, which I meet like other Middle Eastern people in New York and they're like, what? And I regret that. But yeah, I never learned Arabic, but I don't know. I definitely, my connection to Middle Eastern, and even still like in the back of my head somewhere, I'm like, I'm not purposefully trying to be more American at all, but it's still something I don't speak about, like being Middle Eastern a lot. But it's such a part of who I am because I've experienced a weird, like probably more, because I think I'm white passing, but I somehow experienced more racism than a lot of people would think because of my name. When I lived in Brooklyn, I lived in this apartment with a lot of roommates, and we would find roommates like on Craigslist. And I was the guy that would reach out. And I found whenever I used my real name in the ad, no one would come see the apartment. And then I just changed my email and name. And then all of a sudden there was a bunch of people that were interested. And another quick story is I ended up going to the Peabody Conservatory of Music in Baltimore, Maryland for college. And if you look it up, it was widely known as a very racist school for a long time, which I didn't know until I got there. I auditioned and I met the chair of the department, and my audition, they're like, oh, we can't wait to have you. So great, we can't wait to have you. And then 2 weeks later, I get this like, thin envelope in the mail saying I did get in. And I didn't think anything of it. I told a drum teacher at the time, like, oh yeah, it's weird, I didn't get in, but I had a good audition. And he was like, that's weird. And he ended up calling the chair and like, what's up? I never heard anything about it until like a month later. I got a call from the school being like, hey, we reversed our decision. We'd like you to come to the school. And cut to 4 years later, I'm about to graduate. The chair of my department, he said, hey, I never told you this, but your drum teacher called me and said you didn't get in. And I was so confused because we wanted you to come to the school. And so I went to the administrative office and I was like, hey, what's up? How come you sent this guy a rejection letter? And they go, Shareef, what is that? Like, what kind of name is that? It's just really weird.
Be so for real.
He was like the only Black teacher at the school. So he kind of like had a feeling something was up. Like he used to park his car in the garage and get out of his car, and like other professors at the school would hand him their keys to go park their car. He kind of knew what was up. And so he was like, yo, this is crazy. Make sure he comes to the school and give him money because this is pretty fucked up. And that's what happened. Even later in life, I just had this weird complex about my name. It's like got me in trouble. And that happened with dating sites too. I'm not on the apps right now. I'm single, but I'm not on the apps anymore because for a lot of reasons. But one of them was because I learned to like not use my full name on it. I would put S, and then I would have these great conversations with people. And then it would be like naturally a time to like have the first date, and they'd be like, oh, I should probably know your full name. And I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I would say Shareef, and then they would disappear.
No, just because your name?
Yeah.
That's wild.
I think part of that, yes, is racism. And I think part of that, I don't know, I try to think the best of people.
Yeah, but you know what? Me too. But sometimes you have to hold people accountable and be like, no, you're actually you need to educate yourself more, and you need to learn that also New York and Toronto, I feel like we're big cities. There's so much diversity. Like by this point, you should be used to people coming and being on dating apps from different backgrounds. I just feel like you have to call people out when it's relevant because you can't give everyone the benefit of doubt. Sometimes it is just you're straight up racist and you don't want to see people outside of your race or culture.
That just blows my mind because a lot of things about me are very American. I don't have an accent. You know what I'm saying?
And I feel like I've had similar experiences to a certain extent. Everyone always has to do a double take on my name. It's never Mehak, right? It's like Mehak, Shubi. Also, sometimes when people are always wondering, they're like, wow, you look so exotic. Like, what's your background? And I'm like, I'm Pakistani. And they're like, no, I thought you'd be Persian or you'd be this. And I'm like, what are you trying to say about Pakistanis? So I get those microaggressions sometimes too.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
I'm hearing a lot about like growing up, the things that you deal with in terms of dating and your name and culture and background and everything. What is your platform to talk about this with? Like, do you have genuine friendships in your life, other men that you can go to and talk about these things and vent and, be like, hey man, like this happened to me. Does this happen to you? Like, does that happen?
A little bit, especially more in the recent years now that like most of my friends my entire life have been women, actually. I have a lot of platonic friends who are women, and I talk a lot about that with them. Being in comedy and being a writer, you like have to write and talk about yourself all the time. And so I'm like in a bunch of writers groups, and through that, I do talk with other men a lot about like, especially other like men with immigrant parents. And we talk about this stuff a lot. But I guess it is more of a like, oh, is there something there? Like, is that a cool idea to talk about on stage? But I would say that I never really talked about when someone would disappear on a dating site or when like, the whole Craigslist thing. Like I would tell my roommates that and they'd be like, I can't, that's so weird. It's funny. A lot of like white folks, especially when they know you, they almost like don't believe it because they don't get it, I guess. The good folks, they just like can't even wrap their head around it.
It's fascinating, right? Because like as a girl, like something so minor happens in my life. Okay, let's get the girls together. We're going to brunch, right? Or I have a lot of like queer friends too. So anytime when it comes to like work, dating, or just even self-improvement, self-development, it's so easy to have a listening ear because it's expected. And this topic came up because I was having a conversation with one of my guy friends. And he was having some relationship issues with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend was like, yeah, you can't talk about this with other girls that are not very close friends. If you need to talk about it, like go talk to a guy. And he was just like, well, what do I say? How do I talk about this? When is the last time you maybe had a conversation with one of your guy friends about like a deeper topic and like what was the reaction?
This is probably awful, but sometimes I don't really trust. Sometimes I feel like I don't trust their opinion on stuff like that. Because like, I don't know that they're like emotionally mature enough to like have an opinion that I care about. God, that's probably awful. I think it also depends on age. Like being in the arts, it's like age gaps within like, as friends, you work with a lot of people at different ages. Like when I was in my 20s and I was like, playing a lot of gigs on drums in New York, there was like no age gaps with friends. You'd work with people that were in their 60s. You'd work with people your age. You'd work with all ages. And now I've gotten a little older. It does seem like women mature faster, right? What do you think about that?
I don't know if there is a biologically a reason that happens, but I will say innately we are encouraged and there is a safe space for us to share our emotions and express our emotions more openly and talk about the things and not be told, why are you talking about that? Or you can't cry, or this is showing a weakness. You know what I mean? So I think it's nature and nurture. And then I also think that there are a lot of tools and resources that are encouraged for women, again, to like lean on and find that maturity and like, you know, deal with your emotions. I do think that that space is very much growing for men too. There's a lot of content around it. There's a lot of podcast around it, which I am so grateful that it's now being encouraged. But I do see the disproportionate balance growing up. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I'm ashamed to say that I'm definitely one of those guys that like in their 20s was low key raised by their girlfriends. Like I learned so much from living with romantic partners. And I definitely like think that was a big way I got my shit together is they had their shit together more than me. Talking to younger dudes, you know, I'm in this phase where I'm like, you know, trying not to date as much, quality over quantity, I think. And one example, I was talking to a friend of mine, a dude friend who's younger. I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm trying to like be single and just not stay away from it for a while. And he was like, no, I get it. Like, I've never been in a relationship before. He was like, yeah, no, I don't want to be in a relationship either. I was like, no, you should be. Like, you need, like, I can tell that you've never lived with a partner or like had a long-term intimate relationship because regardless of gender, you learn so much about yourself being in a serious relationship, whatever age and whatever gender you're at. That's just like across the board. You learn so much about yourself. And you can tell like when someone has never done that, because they never had to question themselves, you know? For me, it was thinking about like the old arguments that I had like 10 years ago and being like, oh, I was wrong. And then like dealing with that, like, oh, you just learn so much from being wrong.
Totally. And I think you said it best, right? Like you can easily tell when someone hasn't had a lot of relationships or has never been in a relationship. I have someone really close to me and I've seen the evolution of their growth by not being in a relationship and then being with someone that is very strong, independent, confident. I think it teaches you a lot about how you perceive things and how you show up. So I think it is very important. And we had this conversation with one of my guests last episodes, and it was men need more genuine friendships because it also allows them to humanize other people. Because the conversation that we had is, you know, it's sometimes if a man is not interested in you, then that's why, like, you know, sometimes they'll just ghost you or they don't think they owe you an explanation because they're not seeing you as a friend, as a person that like, no, I need to communicate. But again, for a lot of people, ghosting is easier than communicating, but that also comes with maturity.
Do you think it's possible for straight men and straight women to have intimate platonic relationships?
I don't think a man and a woman can just be friends. If one or the other person is somewhat attractive or good looking, they're going to catch feelings and it's going to get complicated. So no, I don't think a man and a woman can just be friends. I have a lot of male friends, but they're queer. But a straight man and a straight woman, in my eyes, cannot be just friends.
I wish you weren't right. I think you're right. And I think that's kind of fucked.
Have you ever fallen for a friend, but like a friend that was a girl, and you guys tried to keep a friendship and then you just had feelings?
No.
So why do you think that I'm right?
Because in my experience, it has been the reverse.
Okay, got it. Someone's fallen for you and you weren't able to reciprocate that.
I think I'm very good at keeping it cool. Like, even if I'm attracted to the person, I think like I can, it took a long time. Like I didn't used to be like that. I didn't used to be able to be like, if I was attracted to the person and we had like a vibe, like some sort of like chemistry, like close friends can have chemistry, you know? I think 10 years ago, I don't think I would have been able to do it. But now I feel like I am able to do it. I don't think that's a thing most people can do.
And also, one more thing, I think as you grow older, there are different layers that weave into it. For example, I have seen people be friends where both folks are married, right? They have families, they're happily married, and then they're friends. But I think the level of friendship we're referring to, where you're like calling them up at like any hour of the day, like texting them like, hey, I need to talk to you. I think at that level, no, you can't just be friends. Like somehow, I feel like in chemistry or attraction, if there's compatibility, then eventually will lead to that. So I don't know. If it works for some people, if someone's listening and you're like, they're absolutely wrong, they don't know what they're talking about, I have a friend that I can think of, then good for you. I love that for you. That's just not, that has been my journey.
Doesn't that feel kind of primitive? I can't find this person attractive and be like close friends with them, or and vice versa, or I can't have like a deep emotional connection with this person without wanting them to be my partner. I guess I'm just like embarrassed by that, because that sucks about humans.
Totally. But humans are complicated, and sometimes you just can't figure out why we can't do certain things. It's just the way it pans out.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
I find it easier to have male friendships that are substantial with older dudes, because I think they just went through that phase of whatever bullshit, masculinity bullshit we have to like dig our ways out of isn't as prevalent later in life, I think.
So if someone is listening to this and they want to make more of an effort to be in tune with their emotions, and they want to have more friends that are men, but they don't have anyone in their circle that's encouraging them to do that, what's a good place to start if they want to make that change?
I think like forcing is such a bad word, but like initiating more conversations that have substance. Because there's that whole thing we've all heard the jokes of like, women know X about their female friends, and dudes don't know their dude friends. They don't know like about their families and stuff. Like, I think initiating conversations like that, like really trying to get to know, asking questions. And I find it in myself still sometimes, like not asking as many questions as I could be. There was one guy that I lived with the longest, and like we could have conversations like that because we knew each other. But it's funny. With a guy, you can get there after knowing them for like 10 years. But sometimes it takes that long. I think guys just don't even think to ask those questions sometimes. And I don't know why. And I was like that too. I was like, I don't care what's going on in this dude's family life. I don't know. Now I find those conversations more interesting and more substantial. And I think it's nice really getting to know someone better in that way.
You need to make more of an effort to ask questions. And I've seen y'all do it, like in your work. You're constantly asking questions. Someone in sales, as a lawyer, like you're just asking questions and you have a better quality of work life. And I feel like if they ask more questions on a personal note, you'll have a better personal life. I know what you're saying. And I always think that there's so much content on TikTok around like people teaching women to de-center men, but like men are the ones that have centered women. Like I feel like every conversation, every thought, every end goal is how can I just sleep with this girl? How can I like get a date with this girl? How can I do this? And it's just like expanding your, like having more depth where you are not just talking about women, just get to know someone. There's so much more to a person than just who they're interested in or what they want. I'm just like really curious to hear. Like you do stand-up comedy, you date in New York. What's harder? Like dating in New York or doing stand-up comedy?
Doing stand-up comedy. For the past few years, I've been vintage dating, no app. So I meet people like in person. And gosh, I forgot how much better that is. You date way less. What do you think about like dudes coming up, approaching women at bars? Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think of it?
I'm open to it.
Okay.
I'm not on the apps either. I've left that energy behind in 2024. I want to meet people in spaces that I naturally light up in and I feel good in, right? Because I'm going to be aligned with that person because they're in the same spaces. Now, when I go out to a bar, I don't get approached. Like, no one is coming up to me. They're not really like talking to me much. And I would appreciate if someone came up to me and spoke to me. And I know they're always like, well, like, you have to be inviting, you have to be smiling, you have to be doing this. I'm a very approachable person. If I wasn't interested, then I would be polite about it.
Do you think the fear of rejection has gotten higher? Everyone now is more aware of like all the fucked up shit that women sometimes have had to deal with. I mean, for me, like, okay, how I think about it is like they probably have to deal with enough. I'm not gonna go up and talk to them, like, or I just don't want them to think that I'm like a creep or whatever. And so I'm like, whatever, that's fine. And so I feel like there's a lot of that.
And that's valid. Look, I'm not saying that you need to go talk to every single woman you see at the bar, but there are signs that a woman can give you, right? You're standing at the bar, you guys make eye contact, cool, that happens. You make eye contact again, she smiles at you. And around that part of going up to someone, yes, true. Women, we constantly are overstimulated. We have to look over our shoulder, what's going on, like, oh my God, like sometimes you just want to go out with the girls, you don't want to be bothered. But if you have that inviting energy, then I would say, you're like, take a chance, right? And I have to take this learning into account too, is like your fear of rejection needs to be less than your desire to make a connection with someone, right? And in terms of going up to someone and saying something offensive, I don't think like a, hey, how are you? How's your night going? Or I saw you across the bar. You were very beautiful. I wanted to come say hi, get to know you better. No, that is not an assault even 15 years ago, So I think it's your, like what you say, delivery and reading the signs.
I think that's the difference about dating in New York City. No one looks at, whenever I travel around the country, people look at each other. No one makes eye contact here. It's crazy when people do. It's like, it's almost, when someone does make eye contact with you, it's like you have to unpack it. You're like, whoa, is that person crazy? Or were they trying to talk to me or what? I guess I have heard that it's hard to date in New York and that maybe that's why.
So when was the last time you were in a relationship?
A long-term relationship, it's been a few years.
A few years. Did you meet that person off an app or you met them in real life?
In real life. Any serious long-term relationship I've been in I've met in person. But I met someone off an app. We like hung out during the day a couple times and it was cool. But I wasn't necessarily feeling like either of us were like romantically interested in the other. But like, we had great conversations. I love it. And we had fun like hanging out. And so we just kept hanging out. And we would go to a show. I would walk her home. And that was it. It was great. I loved it. And then one night, we start wrapping it up. Like we were at a bar. She goes like, is this a date? And I was like, oh, I was like, oh, I was so taken aback. We had hung out a bunch of times at this point and just like, I thought it was clear that we were just like friends. And so she goes, is this a date? And I was like, oh, I mean, it can, if you want it to be, it's fine. That would be cool. And I was just like so taken aback. And she goes, we hang out and you walk me home and we never kiss. Don't you think that's weird? And I never thought about it. Like I literally never thought about it. And I was attracted to her and I thought she was very cool. And I guess I never like considered, I thought maybe she wasn't interested in me like that. And so I just accepted that. And so I just like didn't think of her like that in return, I guess. I don't know. Then we were on a date like that immediately and like had a sleepover and everything. And it was cool. And we dated for a little bit. But I felt like after she initiated that, we were like, that was one of the most communicative sort of short-term relationships I'd ever been in. We just like, for some reason after that, like we immediately were like so good at talking to each other about stuff. More so than some of my long-term relationships for some reason.
That's so interesting that like if she didn't bring it up, you would have continued to just walk her home maybe like 4 or 5 more times. I always say I'm going on a first date. If the man makes a move on me, I immediately know you're not interested in me long term. You're just looking for something short term. That's my belief. That's just how I think. But then by the 3rd time, if someone doesn't like kiss me, I'm like, okay, then you're not interested in me, right? But it's like, why do we make these assumptions? And why don't we just like flat out blatantly communicate or ask? I noticed this too, that, I make the assumption, the other person makes the assumption when it could all have just been avoided if we just communicated. And why did you wait for her to bring up something rather than you just say something or communicate?
Because I didn't think of it, or I didn't wonder it. I was just like really enjoying us being friends.
But you were okay with either option because then you went on a date.
Yes, I was. I think that can exist. You know what I mean? Just like, I don't know if there are rules. Like, I think like what you said about like kissing on the first date, like, I think one could want both. One could be like, they are interested in short term and long term.
Fair.
And I was like, with this, in this scenario, I was down for like, well, yeah, great. We can just be friends, or we could be more than friends. I don't know. I don't know. I like it to happen sort of organically, but maybe it sounded like maybe she was looking to like speed up the process, I guess.
Okay, fair. So I feel like I make a lot of content on TikTok around, helping women out in terms of relationships, dating, just from what I've learned from my own experiences, and whoever wants to take it with a grain of salt. But I get a lot of questions on like, well, if they do this or if they said this, like, what do they actually mean by that? I think guys are really simple. Like, you're not listening to what they're saying. They're telling you exactly what they're saying. I also think it's just a waste of time analyzing the why behind it. Just take it at face value. But we will help out people. I'm like really bad at texting. If a guy says that to you, what does it mean?
I don't think there's gender. I think the subtext of that is I don't care about other people nearly as much as I care about myself. Is that too harsh?
No, that's not harsh at all. I always say communication instantly becomes easier when they're into you. So I get it. Okay, that was a good one.
I don't think you have to be into someone to return their text. Like, I think you could just be like a respectable human being in the world and just return someone's message.
Let's say you're talking for a month and you're seeing each other like 2-3 times a week and, very interested. You get a little intimate and then they just pull back.
You've been intimate. It could be the physical stuff was weird.
Okay, final one. Curious to hear this one. At what point is like a man's aha moment? Like, I'm going to take this girl seriously. Like, she's like girlfriend, wife material. Like, have you ever had that? Or at what point does it click for y'all?
For me, it's like when their text hits my phone, I'm like excited. I'm like scrambling to text them back.
I get that. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your stories and chatting with me. And if anyone listening wants to see some of your work, where can they find you on the socials?
If you're on TikTok, I'm at Shareef_Taher. I don't post as much as on IG, but I'm trying to change that. So that would be Shareef_Taher_haha, if you can remember all that. But usually, if you start typing in Shareef Taher, I just feel like there's not that many. I come up in an orange shirt.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. That was a fun chat, and thanks for having me to hang out.
Lovely is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Saadia Khan and Shei, written by me, Mehak. Music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune in every Friday for more Lovely.